Thank you everybody for attending the life cycle of a STEM role model webinar. So this is our 8th webinar in total. So thank you for sticking with us if you're repeater guest. So Edu-Cater Global was founded last year as a non-profit social enterprise. So our aim is to bridge the gap between STEM education and the industry through establishing, nurturing, and enhancing individuals. So the whole point of this life cycle webinar series is basically to take the students, parents, teachers through a journey, starting off from our first webinar was based on GCSEs. So how do you select your GCSEs? And now this webinar is about, work-life balance. And then we've got another webinar towards the end about pensions. So it's going through the different life cycles that you can encounter as a working individual, as a student, and as you're retiring. So we've got two great, fantastic guest speakers on today. So I didn't introduce myself. I'm Friedan Zaba. I work for Rolls-Royce as a manufacturing engineer. And I'll introduce you to Philippa.
Hi everyone, so my name is Philippa Kugonza. I'm a final year mechanical engineering student. I support Frida with these webinars for Edu-Cater, and I'm studying at Coventry University and also did a placement year at Rolls-Royce. So I'm now going to let the guest speakers introduce themselves, tell us their name, their occupation, a fun fact about themselves to lighten the mood, and then we'll get into the Q&A. I'll start off with Gemma.
Hi, I'm Gemma Dixon. So I work for BAE Systems at the minute. I started a new job just in June actually as the principal materials engineer. So I lead a function of 75 people doing things like chemistry, composites, metallics, production support and operations support. Before that I worked for Rolls-Royce, again in the aerospace industry, across a variety of roles for 18.5 years. Fun fact, or probably when I was most fun, I think. So I spent 2 years working abroad, setting up the new fan blade factory in Singapore. I went there by myself. I'd got no commitments at the time, and I ended up visiting 11 new countries. I was between 33 and 35, so I did it quite late, but that was a kind of really fun period for me. I've also got a 3-year-old son, Ethan, now, so I'm balancing work and Ethan. So that's me.
All right. Thank you. Sorry, before I let Amber introduce herself, I just want to mention that this session is being recorded for the purposes of our people who can't attend. So it will be put on our YouTube channel. So I just thought I'd let you know. Also, before we begin our Q&A, towards the end, after we finished our Q&A, there'll be a chance for you guys, for the audience, to ask questions as well. So if you do, along the way, if you do have questions that come to mind, just take a note of them and you'll get to ask them at the end. Okay, Amber, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Amber O'Connor. I am, I guess, a mechanical engineer by sort of what I studied by degree. My job role is the engineering program manager for remote diagnostic services, and that's within the Siemens Energy aeroderivative gas turbine business. So a really long and complicated title, but basically we remotely monitor gas turbines all around the world and make that happen. So I guess a little bit of a fun fact about me is that I am crazy into cars. So anyone who would come across me on social media, on other channels outside of work, you'll just see a lot of car content.
Amazing. Yeah. Okay. Philippa?
Yep. Sorry, if you did want to just switch between the slides, sorry.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So we're going to get straight into our Q&A now. So obviously this webinar session is based on balancing work life and parenthood. So the obvious first question is, how do you balance your work, family, and social life? I'll start with you, Amber.
Okay. Yeah, so the balancing act is hard. I don't think that anyone would ever say that it's easy. So I have a 3-year-old daughter who you can see here, and then I have a 1-year-old son you can see on the right-hand side. So 3 and 1, I guess, is kind of a challenging age because They're sort of just really learning how to become little people themselves and starting to challenge you. And at the same time, I'm still developing myself in my career. So I'm really trying to just step up and achieve the goals that I want to from that point of view. So most recently, I have just taken on managing a team of people. So that brings a new dynamic and a new challenge. And for me, I used to find that I would work all the time. So once I put the kids to bed, I jump back on and I work. And I think that I was going a little bit crazy doing that. So what I do now is on a Monday and Friday afternoon, I turn my work phone off and I'm with my kids solely. Today's a little exception. And I do the same over the weekend. So granted, some evenings I still work late to make up my hours. I feel like I'm gaining that time back by having a complete separation at other times. So for me, just having a really clear boundary between what is working time and what is family time or social time, that's how sort of I do the balancing act.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I guess we do have to separate things every now and then, sort of know when to do what. I'll move on to you, Gemma.
I concur with Amber. It's a hard thing to do, I think. And the other thing that I thought about when I was considering these questions is we don't ask men about this. We don't say, once you've had your children, how do you balance work and life? And I think some of that is, I think there's certain things that drop back on the mum still. So like it's the fancy dress outfit for nursery and it's packing the bag. And I think we kind of need to challenge that a bit in society. But what I do find is I try and separate the two. So I was always very focused at work. I still think I am, because I'm trusting whoever's looking after Ethan to do that. So if he's at nursery, I've got full trust in the nursery nurses to do that. If he's with my parents, I know he's well looked after. So actually, I don't spend a lot of time at work thinking about Ethan because I know he's fine. So it works for me. And then when I am at home with Ethan, I try and make sure that I'm giving him dedicated time. That said, he does sometimes see me work, and I think that's quite a good thing because I want him to see what work is. And I want him to see his mum working, I think. I tell him sometimes, he's got it down as mum builds aeroplanes, and I've said to him, go and tell your friends at nursery, and especially your female friends, go and tell them what mum does. And then I think something's got to give. So if I look back to, I was 38 when I had Ethan. If I look back to my 20s when I was going to work and then doing sport every night or going to someone's house for food or having them around or going out on a big night out or whatever, I'd go on, maybe age warranted it disappearing anyway, but I think that's not going to happen now. So I kind of view my social life more as the stuff I'm doing with Ethan at the weekends. So if we're in a river, that's my social life now, and it's good for Ethan. The kind of time for me, although I try and get some, as reduced, but I think that's just one of those things.
All right. Thank you so much, Gemma. So have you guys always been good at work-life balance? And if not, what's changed? So I'll start with you, Amber. Have you always been great at balancing the both, or at what point did you get to improve on it?
Yeah, so I think that I never, well, it's a bit of a challenge. So when I had my first child, my daughter, I went back to work part-time. And for me, that was because I had that constant fear of missing out on all of those milestones. But after about 6 months, I was going crazy because I really do love what I do. And I felt that I was picking up my phone and checking emails, even though I was only meant to be part-time, and it just wasn't something that was working for me. So after 6 months, I gave it up and I went part-time. But that's when I agreed that I could work more flexibly and do my Monday and Friday afternoons off and then make up my hours. So I think initially when I went back to work after my first maternity leave, I had really good intentions about how I was going to manage sort of that balance by going part-time, but actually for me that didn't work. So having more of a flexible working schedule is what I think has really worked. And I think that now I've been doing that for a couple of years. So after my little girl, and then I've continued it past having my second. That's the balance that I've struck, and now it works. But I don't think that you're ever going to get it right necessarily first time, and a lot of people will change and adapt, and that's just what you have to do as a parent.
And just another add-on, how are you finding it working from home? Because I know you're working from home due to COVID with a kid.
Yeah, it was difficult when nurseries were closed. Now that they're back in nursery and routine, like Gemma said, I have the trust that they're being looked after, whether it's with family or at nursery, and I can really concentrate. But before that, I'm not going to even lie, it was a bit of a nightmare. And I mean, it was sort of I'll get as much work done as I can. However, I have two little humans that are relying on me to feed them and play with them and help them to learn. So yeah, now that nurseries and schools are back open, I think that a lot of parents will feel the same as me and be very relieved.
All right, thank you for the honesty. So Gemma, we'll move on to you.
Yeah, I think I'm probably better since I've had Ethan, if I'm honest. I think the years when there was no reason to stop working, I did so many extra hours, and I feel like I probably didn't curb myself. Now that I've got Ethan, I think I've probably got a healthier view from the point of view of that's my working day, I'm going to go and see Ethan now. And I think it probably makes me make decisions quicker and spend less time dwelling about decisions. So I think for me, having Ethan, I've got that work-life balance much better. Although picking up on something Amber said, I mean, when COVID first struck, working from home with Ethan at the same time, the vast majority of the day was absolutely fine. If I was working, he was doing something, he'd do a jigsaw or play or something. As soon as I had to talk to somebody like this and interact with somebody at work, he wanted to join in, and that's when I found it quite stressful. You've got these two worlds. You can look after Ethan and you can work, and when you've got the two kind of right in your face, it's just, you feel like you're failing both of them. And I think COVID's taken us a long way with that, because I think it's a lot more normal for somebody's dog to bark in the background of a meeting or to arrive. And I think it's a lot more accepting now of get the work done somehow. You don't need to do it in those hours. And it's kind of driving more output, get stuff done rather than attend work and presenteeism.
Mm.
So learning to balance the both. Okay.
Yeah, good thing. Thank you. So moving more to the work side of things, we've also talked about how it impacted the children. Did you feel, were you worried about your career, your position in your career when you had to go back to work after maternity? And how long did you actually take off maternity? And did the workplace sort of support you in this way? And how did they make the transition easier? Could you just talk a bit about that? I'll start with you this time, Gemma.
Yes, so I took off 7.5 months, which was kind of 6 months maternity with holidays lumped on the end. Was I worried about it? Yes, because the job that I did before I had Ethan was setting up a new fan case factory in Malaysia. So it involved, most weeks I was spending the majority of the week working out of Coventry. I live in Lancashire. And obviously it involved lots of backwards and forwards between Malaysia and the UK. So I do remember sitting on maternity leave thinking, I wonder what there is for me when I get back, because the job that I left before I had Ethan in its carnation, I wouldn't have been able to do. What Rolls-Royce did do is there was somebody who was retiring and they got their job plus a project, kind of put it all together and said, well, come back and do this instead. So I was grateful for that at the time, definitely. And I wouldn't have wanted any longer off for maternity leave. I found it quite a transition, actually. So I was going from, it's very full on, you've got this fan case factory, it's about to start, and it's against the clock, and it's very kind of time pressured. And then I sent my last emails and kind of got in the car and went to the hospital. And then I can remember sitting in playgroups going, what do we do now? And my sister was saying, well, you're doing it. And I was like, yeah, but what do we actually do? And the answer's nothing, is it? You just sit around and chat and kind of wait for a cup of tea an hour in. So I think about 3 months into maternity leave, my grandma kind of said, you're ready for back to work, aren't you? And I was, and I really kind of treasured the time with Ethan, but doing that day in, day out, I felt like I was missing something for myself. So yeah, I was quite keen to get back in and kind of re-establish myself back into the workplace.
Yeah, I mean, those are valid reasons. I'm sure there's loads of people that feel like that as well. But I mean, you're a living example that there is still a career after you do have children anyway, because it worked out for you in the end. So
Yeah,
that's
I think,
great.
yeah, thanks. I kind of felt like I like being Ethan's mum, that's fab, but it's still my life as well. So I kind of wanted to do stuff for me as well as him go off and
Yeah.
get independence at nursery.
Yeah, I think that's things. It's one of the things that we all usually need to come to understand is, our careers don't end when we have children. I mean, I can't relate. I've not had children, but it's good to know. There's hope. Your turn, Amber. How long did you take off maternity, and what was the transition like for you to go back to work? Were you worried? What was the break like, and did your workplace support you?
Yeah, so I had about 6 months with both. I think like Gemma, after a couple of months in, especially second time round, I felt like I really needed to get my identity back. I absolutely love being a mum, but when you're off on maternity leave, that is all that you are. And so even like when my husband comes home, it's like we speak to each other and we're mummy and daddy, and you very quickly lose your identity as a person. And I always have that at work because, I create my own status in the work that I do. So I did really miss that. First time round on maternity leave, I didn't do any keeping in touch days because I sort of just consumed myself with being a mom and did the whole, I'm really worried about going back to work. I want to go back, but I'm really worried. And what if my job's not there? And I got myself really nervous and worked up. And it turns out that it was for nothing. About 2 weeks in, it was as if I hadn't even left. And I think first time round for me is that I'd handed over a really big project and I was really worried that I wouldn't necessarily get that back, but I went back in and it was, okay, we've made some progress. Can you take a look and see if we've done a good job and can you carry it forward? And that was a massive relief to me because I felt like maybe I wouldn't be missed. Second time round, I had a graduate cover my role, which for me was a little bit scary because you get that fear of, oh God, what if they do a better job than I do? What if they're going to implement all of these changes or make a decision that I don't agree with? But that's just life. But what I chose to do second time round different was do keeping in touch days. And I probably started them from about 6 weeks and I did them every couple of weeks. And then towards the end, I was doing like a day a week and just slowly transitioned back in. So for me, even though I only went back in technically February this year, it doesn't feel like it was February because it was pretty ongoing all through my maternity leave. And for me, I think that really helped with the anxiety that I felt. And it also kept me in touch and meant that when I went back into work, I knew exactly what I was going to face and I sort of hit the ground running, which is something that I think first time round I really struggled with.
And just to ask, what are keep in touch days? So is that something that your company offers, or is that just for us that don't know?
Yeah, so keep in touch days are basically working days that you take whilst you're on a type of leave. So in my case, maternity leave. So it just meant that the company would pay me to go in and work, and I could literally do a couple hours and have a meeting, or I could do a whole day. Depends on the circumstances. But it meant that I didn't have to end my maternity leave to do that, and they would make sure that I got appropriately paid. So it's just a really great way of, like it says, keeping in touch and making sure that you're up to date with what's going on, even if it's just some company changes, reorganizations or whatever, so that you're informed so that you don't feel hit and overloaded when you come back to work.
And I think that's good because it does make it an easy transition. So moving on to the next question. So how has having a family changed your perspective on your career path? So what was when you joined Siemens, when you joined the engineering world, what was your initial career path, sorry, and how has having a family changed that? We'll start with you, Gemma.
Me? So I don't really feel like I've ever had a career path that I've wanted to follow per se. I think I've just done lots of different jobs where I felt like it's a really big challenge, and then it's not as challenging anymore, and then I've gone on to something else that's more interesting and kind of re-challenged me. So I don't really think it's fundamentally changed. I think I felt parked to a certain extent in the company I was in, Rolls-Royce, after having Ethan, and that kind of drove me to move to BAE Systems, if I'm honest. I've been really lucky because that move in the summer has really refreshed me. I feel like me again. I feel like the me that's like kind of going to work all out again, and doing lots of things and changing things. So it was a refresh that I needed. I've still got ambition. It's not a burning ambition to take over the world, but I feel like I've got a lot of time left, and I don't want to see myself in a job where I'm just ticking over. I remember when I was on maternity leave, one of my friends kind of said to me, right, just take it steady now. You've done a set of hard jobs. Why stress yourself out? You've got Ethan now. Just go in, give it a sensible amount, and then come home. The thing is, while Ethan's at nursery, I'm at work for a lot of hours, regardless of whether it's a challenging job or an easy job, because he's being looked after. So the thought of going in and being bored every day, it's not what I wanted. So like I said, I feel like I've got Ethan's good doing what he's doing. He's at school next year. I've got a new challenging job, and I feel like I've kind of set myself, and I've got ambition still.
So do you think actually having Ethan has helped you move to BAE Systems, which has helped progress your career in some strange way? Because I'm assuming that if you didn't have him, would you have stayed in Rolls-Royce, maybe stayed in similar jobs?
Yeah, probably. And obviously, like if you take factors like COVID away, I think the situation that I was in all the time I was in Rolls-Royce, because I was very mobile. So I could work most of the week in Coventry, and I could go down to the Isle of Wight, and I could go to Derby, and it was kind of spending a lot of time for a few years living in hotel rooms, which seems weird when you look back at it. And obviously working abroad, it made it less easier for me to move around with Ethan. So I'm in a fortunate position that if I drive kind of 10, 12 miles that way, there's Rolls-Royce, and if I drive 10, 12 miles that way, there's BAE Systems. So I think it's,
that's the boat.
geographic. But it's like I said, for me, it's still aerospace. I still understand the rules of the game. The industry is still really interesting. It's just kind of refreshed me in a new company, I think. But yeah, like you said, I think Ethan's the catalyst for that.
Good. Okay, we'll move over to you, Amber.
Yeah, I think for me, so when I joined and I started for an apprenticeship, so I started work at 16. And so I've had my kids, I guess, fairly young because I'm 26 now with 2 kids. And for me, I guess I started and I became an engineer, and I thought that engineering is what I would do the core of. And I'm still an engineer, no matter what my job description is. No one takes that away from me. But I think having kids to me made me understand more what I wanted from my career, and that actually I get a real thrill out of developing people and leading people and giving that strategic direction. So although I'd started to sort of make movements in that way before having kids, I think I now have the confidence in myself to know what I want, and some of the challenges that kids bring into your life and the skill set that you get from that has probably pushed me even more so to go, no, that's what I want to do. So I think for me, having kids has been a challenge in terms of that balance and lack of flexibility in some ways with travel and stuff like that. But it really has allowed me to focus on what it is that I want and sort of push towards that.
So it's affirmed your decision. So what do you want? What's your career perspectives?
Yeah, so I've just secured a people management position. So I've been task managing a team. Now I have that official people management. I'd like to do that for a period and then sort of grow further up into the organisation. I guess I would really like to work for Siemens Energy centrally and sort of be more involved with the strategic direction of the overall company, which is quite a big ambition maybe, but I think I can do it.
Yeah, you can. I like that. Thank you.
The sky's the limit. It's not such a big ambition. If you put your mind to it, you'll do it. You've done a lot before already. Thank you for your responses. So, what do you wish you had known before? Oh no, sorry, I'll skip the question. So some individuals in situations where they have children and they're still in school. So if like Amber, you did mention you'd had kids quite early. So what advice would you offer to people that have had children quite early? For example, when they're still in school or still at university, do you think they should still carry on with their career or drop out or take a gap year, consider remote learning, just entirely letting go of that, taking it out of school? There's all these different options. What would you advise a young parent to do? Start with, yeah, go on.
Yeah, I'll go. So I guess there's, like you say, there's loads of different options, and it kind of depends on someone's circumstances. So when I was finishing up my degree, I think I sat my final exam and I was like 8 months pregnant. And I remember sitting in that exam hall thinking, oh God, I really don't want to go into labour early. And that was sort of, it was my plan to happen like that. And I finished up my degree. But I think even if I'd have had my child earlier, middle of degree, I probably, knowing me, would have managed that and carried on. Maybe if you take a gap year, a break, and then carry on. I have someone in my family who had a child very young. She was doing a college course and she did drop out, but she picked it up later on in life, and she's actually just opened her own business just a couple of weeks ago. So there's loads of different variations of things that you should do, and it completely depends upon, you know, the support networks that you have around you and what you really want, because there's certain people. So me and Gemma have both talked about how we love being mums, but we also really love our careers, and that drives us. But there's other people, and you can become a parent and that completely fulfills everything that you want out of life, and that's okay. That's not a bad thing. So if you're that sort of person, then actually maybe putting a hold on your career is right. And I don't think that there's a right or a wrong answer, and it completely depends upon the person.
Yeah, thank you. Gemma, what's your take on that?
No, I think I agree with Amber, really. I think if somebody wanted to do it, they'd find a way, wouldn't they? And it might take longer, and it might be doing it part-time, and it might be using, I don't know, waking up early in the morning. But the thought of somebody dropping out if they wanted to pursue a career because they feel like they can't because they've got children just kind of makes, you know, that can't be the right answer, can it? There's lots of different ways to do this, isn't there? And it's possible to do both if you really want to do that. One thing I would say is I've talked to some women in their career who've kind of said, I'm just off the graduate training scheme. I'm in my early 20s. I can see a job I want. I think I'd be about 30, but I think I want children at 30 as well. So I'm not going to pursue that. And I've kind of said, no, like carry on, because the world changes, doesn't it? And somebody's got to go first in a situation. And if there's a job that you want and you can see lots of men doing it and you feel like you can't have children and do that job, then maybe you're the first person to do it. So I think it's a case of whoever's kind of watching this and's got aspirations, it's like, don't create a situation where you think you can't do something because you've not done before. So somebody's got to go first, haven't they?
Yeah. True. Yeah, I have a family member that was in a similar situation. She had a child just starting her second year of uni. Her mom wasn't too impressed, but just decided to take the year off. Luckily, it was towards the end of her first year. Then just sort of took a break, had the year with her child, and got straight back into uni, got a degree. But when the time she took the year off, started working, and that's the career that she's actually followed. So it actually helped redirect her path, and she realized she was doing the wrong degree for her before. So, I mean, sometimes it could be a blessing in disguise.
Yeah. All right. We'll move over to the next question. So let's flip it around. So what do you wish you would have known before having children? Any advice you can share with new parents or soon to be parents, or, you know, there's people on this call that might be, you know, in 10 years time or 5 years time planning to have children and still want to maintain their work-life balance and have that career. What advice would you give them? So we'll move over to Amber. to answer this first?
So I guess advice for me is you'll get a lot of people giving you advice. My advice would be to take everyone's advice, but don't necessarily think that everyone's right, and find your own way. I 100% guarantee you that every parent is winging it in some format. And I would describe that is my style. And I will openly say that because I'm not perfect. And, I've had to learn and adapt as I grow being a parent, because this was all new to me. And yeah, I'm 3 years in, and I'm sure that the next, 15 or 20 years are going to be just as challenging as the first 3. But yeah, I kind of wish that before I became a parent, I maybe acknowledged the fact that it wasn't going to be perfect. I think sometimes you can have this image in your head of what it's going to be like. And it's not always going to be like that, especially with newborns. They're really challenging. Nobody necessarily talks about how hard it is going to be to get them to sleep or to breastfeed. And these types of conversations that people just don't have. So yeah, I think that sort of stuff is what I would advise people.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Gemma, what about you? What are your advices before?
I'm kind of smiling at this. I've got 2 angles. So just picking up from what Amber said. So it's so much harder than you think, I think, because if you look at friends on social media and they kind of share their black and white photo of, the child's feet, and you kind of imagine them going out for meals and you've got a baby asleep in the pram, and it kind of being your life the same but with a little baby in it that occasionally needs kind of burping or it's nappy changing, and there's days where it takes all day and you just can't even understand until you're doing it, how can that take the whole day? So I'm one of 4, I'm the eldest of 4. Quite often during maternity leave and since, I've kind of said to mum, like, why would you do this 4 times? Why? And obviously she wanted to, she'd have kept having children, but it really is quite demanding. It's worth it, but it is hard. And the other kind of point I'd make, so I kind of felt like school lied a little bit, because when we were in lessons, PPE lessons I think they're called, in the mid-90s, it was all very much if your contraception fails and you find yourself pregnant, your career will be over, life is end, and you will have a baby and that's the end. And I don't think anybody ever made it clear that it's not that easy. So I waited until I think I was 36 when I first started to try to get pregnant, and I kept getting pregnant really easily, but over a period of a year and a bit I miscarried, had an ectopic pregnancy, miscarried, and then got pregnant with Ethan. And I've got lots of friends who've had IVF or struggled to have children. So I think one thing I wish I'd known before I came to having children is again, even that bit's not as easy as school kind of made it sound. Yeah. Sorry, go on. So the pictures, I did a presentation once at work. The pictures are kind of, I found it's an awareness bit, isn't it? When I'd kind of miscarried and then gone back into work, sometimes some of the blokes at work will go, hey, look at my new granddaughter, here's a baby picture, and they put it right in front of me, and there was no malice, it was just badly timed and picked the wrong person. But it's almost a case of, don't assume that if somebody's about to get married, they're going to get married and have a child straight away, and don't assume that because they've had one they want 2, and don't assume it's even what they want. I think kind of going forward we need to just be more open on, a woman might or might not want children. She might want them young, she might want them when she's older, she might want 10, she might want 1. It's nobody's business, so don't ask and don't assume and don't chuck comments out in front of them in the workplace, I think.
And how did you deal with it in the workplace? Because I guess you were still going to work while all of this was happening. So again, you're managing your health and you're managing, being a manager at work at Rolls-Royce, and you're still trying to keep sane and keep your face, smiling. How did you manage?
Yeah, so it was hard because I felt that, at the same time as I was pregnant, not pregnant, etc. The new fan case fracture was going up in Malaysia, so it was a challenging time at work. There were not many female managers around at work, and I think I was trying to put on a really good face of I'm fine and don't exclude me from anything, and you know, I'm still with you all. Because I think I was thinking if the child thing didn't work, I definitely wanted a career. So I was almost trying, and then at the same time I was trying to relax, to give myself, my body a chance. So yeah, a tricky balance at the time, I think. Go on. I'm glad I got through it. I think I got people around me well positioned who knew what I was going through, who I could talk to if I felt like I wanted to go and talk to somebody, and I think they kept their eye on me, really. But yeah, happy ending in the end. But
thank you so much for sharing that, because like you said, a lot of people don't think of that. A lot of people think straight away you'll get pregnant and you'll have, you know, 5-10 kids, but it's not easy for everybody. So thank you for being so honest with that, Gemma.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Move on to the next question. So what opportunities would you advise individuals without children to take advantage of before starting their families? And what other things are you involved in outside of work? I'll start with Amber this time.
So for me, I did a little bit of traveling before I had kids, but yeah, I started my family quite young, so I guess I had limited travel opportunity. So I would definitely say to people, you know, take every opportunity that you get. If you can travel, see the world, you know, if you can take a role flexibly, like Gemma's talked about how she went and lived elsewhere and took on a role, that's really great for your career and your development. And it doesn't just grow you from a career point of view, but culturally, and there's so many great things with that. So, you know, whilst you're sort of flexible, I would most definitely advise people to, you know, take those opportunities if it suits you. So yeah, I think that's a big thing for me. And then I guess the other side of the question was in terms of outside of work. So I mentioned at the start for me about cars. So I'm really crazy with those. But some of the things that I push, which are work related outside of work, is I am a massive promoter of women in engineering because there's just not enough. I really love talking about the fact that I'm a parent because it's not talked about enough and there's still a massive stigma attached to it. And diversity and inclusion in the workplace is another really big thing that is sort of what makes me up. So I try to do a lot of promotion about diversity and inclusion. So that's sort of my work related stuff that I do outside of work as well.
And you were nominated for the IET Young Woman of the Year as well.
Yeah.
Just to put that in there. So yeah. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I think we'll move over to Gemma.
Yeah, Gemma.
I think I've already made this point, but just taking the question literally, women don't have to have children. So I've got friends who actively don't want them. They never wanted them. They don't hang around with them. They love their career. They love their social life. They love traveling, and that works for them. And I think society is getting a lot more accepting of that. And then apart from that, like Amber said, travel. So I'd got a friend called Abby in Derby who there was one day and she came round for a cup of tea, I think, and I kind of said, I've had this really good idea. I want to work abroad. And I thought I'd only come up with it that morning. And she just said, for the love of God, just do this or stop talking about it. And it felt like it was simmering. I was in my early 30s, and just luckily, it was at the same time as Rolls-Royce was putting up loads of new facilities. So I ended up working and living in Singapore for just over 2 years. Didn't know anybody when I got there, met loads of new people through work, met some brilliant women in different industries, and then just travelled. And it just felt brilliant because once you get in that community, everybody's very yes, and let's go to Bali for the weekend, and let's go to Hong Kong, and let's go to the Grand Prix, and everybody's really up for stuff, and it just gives you a different view on life. So yeah, I'm really glad that I did that while I'd got the chance, and now obviously I've come back and feel more settled with Ethan. But yeah, it's a lot harder to do with children, obviously, because at the time it was just me. If I'd have gone and hated it, I'd only got myself to blame, and I'd not taken anybody with me. So yeah, it just seemed easy to do while it was just me.
Okay. So one last question before we're open for questions. So how do you take care of yourself in terms of your mental health to remain calm and yet productive with work, juggling friends, family, and everything else you do outside work? So we'll go over to you, Amber.
So, and it's probably since lockdown has started sort of getting a little bit easier. But one of the things that I wanted to do and never could when I was going into the office was bring a bit of work-life balance and taking care of myself, was going to the gym. So recently I've started booking slots into my calendar sort of over lunch times where I can go sort of unwind, get fit, go to the gym. And it's kind of nice because it gives me sort of a natural break in the day, where I can, sometimes I will think about work, but other times I don't. And it's really nice to sort of have that break. And for me, I think that's really helped sort of with my mental well-being. So I'm not saying that everyone has to go to the gym, but I think everyone should definitely try to take some time to take care of themselves in whatever way they see fit. And that's really important.
Yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, with the gym, that's good. Good luck. It's all about the consistency as well.
Honestly, that's I think sometimes it's not for everyone, but I mean it's great that it works for some people.
We'll move over to Gemma.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just started doing yoga a couple of weeks ago because I felt like I was just starting to simmer and needed to do something, which is quite fun because as I'm doing it, Ethan's doing it with me. He's obviously really flexible, so he just bends and just grabs the bottom of his feet, and it's really easy. But I find time by myself. So if I go off for a walk by myself, within 5-10 minutes, I can feel all the stress dropping off. And I always thought of myself as a really sociable person who got a lot of their energy off other people. But between work and Ethan and home, the time that I spend by myself for myself, I feel that that's quite precious now. So yeah, I kind of, I just need to be by myself. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go around the block. Even going to the supermarket by yourself. Just like, yay.
The things we take for granted.
Oh no. You literally see the transition because my sister is a very extroverted person. But after she had kids, the amount of alone time she asks for is just crazy. I'm like, what happened? You never want to be by yourself. And now it's just like, even if I have 5 minutes to myself, it will be fine.
Yeah, even the commute now, the commute for me was kind of the bit you'd got to do to get to work. And now it's like just me and the music and the car. Like,
yeah.
Okay.
So thank you both so much.
Oh,
Go
yeah.
on, Frida.
I was just going to say thank you so much to Amber and Gemma. We're going to open the floor for questions so the audience can ask any questions that they want. I believe there was one posted on the chat, so feel free to either comment on the chat and you'll go to everybody, or feel free to unmute yourself and then just ask our guest speaker questions.
Yeah, so I'll read one of the questions that was sent in earlier. What tangible things does your company do to help you maintain work-life balance? I'll direct this one to Gemma first.
Okay, so I think both Rolls-Royce and BAE Systems have been very flexible around start and finish times so that people can do the school run, and kind of understanding about, when I was at Rolls-Royce, I was doing Monday to Thursdays because that let me have Friday free with Ethan, which I found really good when he was a tiny baby. And if I'm honest, both of them are kind of open to, as long as you get the work done, you can move that around the nursery times or things you need to do for the children. And it's like I said earlier, I think COVID has actually helped this along massively, because it is a lot more about, be in your dining room, be at work, be half the time nobody knows where you are, but get the work done rather than, you have to be seen in the office. So I think that's kind of stepped it forward and made it more acceptable to, maybe do the school run and then carry on later in the evening, like Amber's talking about.
Yeah. All right. But do you have anything to add to that as well?
Yeah, so at my place, we've kind of had this flexible working already in place for quite a while. So our core hours are 10 till 3, So that really enabled people to be able to do things like that school run, which has been really useful. And it also means that, you know, if not even just for parents, but if you're traveling to work from quite far away, then you can get into the office as early as 7 and leave as early as 3, or you can do the opposite way to avoid the traffic the other way. So that flexibility really helps. And then, like Gemma said, I think because of the pandemic, now working remotely, it's really enabled people to just get the job done and work whatever hours they need to in order to make that happen. So it doesn't matter if I take an hour and a half out to go to the gym over a lunchtime, because I'll put in that extra time in the evening and make sure that I get all my commitments done. And I'm liking this new way of working. And I think that a lot of companies have had to sort of develop their trust in its employees. And I think that that's going to really help sort of with how people feel about work. Within Siemens Energy, we've always sort of had this flexible working, but I think with the new normal, I think the expectation for us is to only be in the office up to 2 days a week. So like Gemma said, actually being visible isn't necessarily required anymore. It's about just making sure that you input and that you're valued as a person from what you deliver. So that's really good.
All right. While we wait for a few more questions to come in, I just had a quick question. Has having children ever made you consider a career change?
Maybe a little bit for me. So when I wasn't sure what job I was going back to after maternity leave, or whether there'd be something suitable, I think it did start me wondering, and I'd got as far as teaching, which is what I wanted to do when I was growing up, if I'm honest. So it, like, still related to science and maths, but never seriously, if I'm honest. It was just a kind of, what would I do if there wasn't something there for me? Kind of plan territory.
Yeah, I think for me, I guess being quite early on in my career anyway, it's sort of more just reinforced that this is really what I wanted to do, rather than made me consider anything else. So it was really good.
All right. I think there's a few questions that have come up on the chat. So do you feel more should be said about men assisting with regards work-life balance? Wait, balancing for women. With regards work balancing for women.
Yeah.
And somebody said yes.
That's my friend Jade. Yeah, because I've had a few conversations over the last few years with men at work who they're going to do the school run, or they're going to look after an elderly parent, or they're going to go and do something, and they're really apologetic. And my view very clearly is go and help and manage your life and manage your work and just deliver. And what I don't think they realise that they're doing is they're levelling off the playing field, and they're making it more acceptable for everybody to help. And also it seemed more normal if a woman says, well, I'm going to go and do it, it's not just the women asking. It's everybody saying, I need some flexibility in my life. And then the more men do that, the more their children are watching. Sometimes the man's doing it, sometimes the woman's doing it. It kind of
the norm
levels off again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's like Gemma said, that it needs to be more of an open discussion. I think that it's becoming more normal that men help. I rely on my husband so much. He does pretty much all of the nursery runs, apart from when my kids are on a half day. And he takes quite a lot of the bulk, and at his work, they understand that maybe if something comes up and I'm away on business, or if I'm in the office, then he'll be the closest and the person who needs to go out and do that. But it's still the assumption that should be the mum. And why is that the case when it's they're 50% less? So I think that it is changing, and especially with more people remotely working, a lot of dynamics are changing, and I would really like that stigma to be changed, that it doesn't automatically go to the mum, and that the expectation is that, you know, the mum does this, this and this. I would like it to just be the parents. I do think it's changing, but it's probably going to be a slow process, but I do think the pandemic has probably helped to accelerate it a little bit.
Yeah, and I think just a little fact as you were saying that, I think, is it Norway or Netherlands where maternity or paternity can be taken by any of the parents. So they can do 50-50 if they want, or they can do 100%, or the woman can go back to work. So whereas I guess in the UK, we're still a bit far away from that, where men only get 2 weeks, I believe, 2 to 3 weeks.
So shared paternity leave has come in the UK. So it's quite a recent thing. I never took the offer up on it second time round. I don't think it was available first time, which shows how new it is. So you can split between the man and woman. You can have 50% each, and you can take that up over a year. So for me, I was only ever planning on doing 6 months, but really my partner could have done 6 months as well. And it's great because it puts some of that responsibility onto the other parent. And yeah, allows you to have that extra quality time. So I don't necessarily know how many people are taking that type of offer up yet, but I'm hoping that it does become more normal.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think we've got one more question before we wrap up. Another one from Lenny. So what is the best support one can offer to someone in that position? So in terms of, especially for men. So from your perspective, what's the best offer that men can support you guys in? So we'll move over to Gemma. Don't know if you can see on the chat.
Yes. I think... So when I was on maternity leave and worrying about going back to work, there was a list of things that I kind of thought, well, if somebody says this, then that would be a reply. And if somebody says this, that would be a reply. And the majority of people were absolutely brilliant. I landed back, they treated me the same. They're asking questions about Ethan, but other than that, they're not dwelling on it, and they're still letting you be work you and not kind of acting like you're a different person. The odd person said things like, so, do you feel less clever now you've had a baby with baby brain?
Wow.
Luckily, this was one of the things I'd thought about on maternity leave. So I just went, nope, sorry about that. And that was it. But I think it's kind of, you know, don't assume that you're going to suddenly give half efforts at work, or that you want to go part-time, or that you are going to be acting differently. I think like I said, it's acknowledge, yes, you've had a child, and yes, you might want to talk about them briefly and ask after them. But other than that, treat you like you're still an equal at work, and you're still that person you used to be, and don't expect you to be a different version, or a weaker version, or a more dilute version.
Yeah.
For me.
You are still yourself, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't feel any different in myself at work after having Ethan than I did before. It's me at work, and I want to achieve things. It wasn't like, oh, it's me at work, but actually I'm just doing the mum thing now, and I'm just filling the day in.
Yeah.
You know, I was the same.
Good. Amber, over to you.
Yeah, I resonate with a lot of things that Gemma's saying, and for me, I actually think that becoming a parent gave me a new diversity, a new skill set that I brought into work. So I almost went back in and felt re-energized and sort of felt stronger in order to tackle any challenges that were thrown at me. I certainly felt like some of my communication skills got better, and the way that I understood people, and sort of taking that time to break situations down is things that I developed from becoming a parent. I think the thing that I appreciated, and it's probably the point of being in a man's world, is that they don't tend to ask a lot of questions about personal life, or that's my experience of it. So there wasn't that, oh, you know, you've just come back into work, how's your baby, and asking loads and loads of questions. There's a little bit of interaction, and then that's it, and everyone carries on. And for me, that was great, because it then, allowed me to get into the zone where I was me, and I knew that my kids were going to be okay at nursery or with family. So that was really good. I think as women, we tend to ask more questions and be more emotional and emotive, and that's not a bad thing. But I kind of maybe avoided some of, I guess, the office conversations with women initially because I knew that they'd want more from me. So yeah, I actually felt that working in more of a male-dominated environment, going back to work was easier because it was, okay, I'm back at work, let's carry on. And I don't think that I felt particularly judged being a parent and having that balance. I think that the management around me were really good, and they knew on occasion, you know, I'd need flexibility, my kid was ill or whatever, but it's no different to any other parent. So like I said, the pressure shouldn't just be on me as a mom. All my colleagues who are dads should be expected the same.
Mm.
Very true.
True.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you both for your responses. We're ending the session now, but just to make a final remark, let everyone know, thank you so much for attending this webinar, everyone who has been here. It was lovely to have you. We do have our next webinar on the 2nd of November. That will be a Monday, the same time still, 5 to 6 p.m. British Standard Time or 7 to 8 p.m. East African Time. You can sign up the same way you signed up for this. Just go to our website, click the link, register, and we'll send you the Zoom link over. It will be based on career breaks and career changes. So please do make sure you sign up to that. We'll look forward to having you. And again, thank you so much, Amber and Gemma, for your responses. It's been great to have you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So feel free to exit unless you've got any questions for Amber or Gemma. And they've got 5 to 10 minutes at the end that they can spare. If you haven't, thank you so much for participating. And yeah, feel free to leave the conversation. Thank you.